Hello, you're very welcome to episode 6 of the Rossie Podcast in association with Shannonside FM. I'm joined this evening by Conor Devaney to look back on Roscommon's 7-point victory over Down in Kingamoff at Dr. Hyde Park. We'll also be discussing how the new rules impact the game, and we'll take a look at next weekend's game away to Louth. Okay, you're very welcome to the Rossie Podcast. I'm joined by Conor Devaney to look back at Roscommon's 7-point win over Down. So, first game of the season, Conor, first win. First of all, what do you make of it?
It was positive overall, yeah. We expected Roscommon to win. I suppose for a spell towards the end of the first half, we were maybe doubting that, but then we knew they had a strong breeze in the second half, and I actually felt they were going to get more 2-pointers than they did in the end, but it was still enough. That breeze was going to be enough to see them out in the end, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I suppose the big thing is, like, first half especially, Down had the wind. They got 6 2-pointers, and I suppose old scores, I'm not 100% sure, but it might have been a point either way. Suddenly Roscommon are down by 5. If this game, in terms of, you know, looking at the new rules, the 2-pointers, how quick a game can swing, because Roscommon were even 7 down in the second half, 1 by 7. It's a 14-point swing in a half. Yeah,
it's very different. It's almost like hurling in that regard. You wouldn't have seen it in football that much, especially the way teams were set up before now. But again, with the 2-point, it can easily swing from 6, 8, 10 points back over. So and one thing, while we're talking about the 2 points, the free kicks made a big difference, the 2-point free kicks, and in my opinion, it's one rule that needs to go by next weekend, and the FRC need to look at. I think it will go, but I don't know why they would wait another few weeks and wait till a break. They just need to get rid of it, in my opinion.
So you're talking about all frees, not technicality ones. No, thing, all frees.
All frees. Every team in the country has one free taker that will score 40-metre frees for fun. We know that for the last I don't know how many years, and it's just not justifiable that they should be rewarded with 2 points. Definitely not.
Would that, I suppose the argument they'll make is, would that encourage fouling outside the 2-point arc, where if a fella is lining up and say we'll foul him, and it'll only lead to a 1-pointer then?
Yeah, but that's the way frees were. I don't think that's going to happen too much. I think the 2-point, it's not a major skill for a free taker to score from 40 yards. It's just not, and it doesn't deserve 2 points.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of this. I call it a bit of nonsense, this bringing up the 50 yards, whatever. If it is a descent or a breach, fair enough. I think a 1 point is fine. This thing of, in the height yesterday, there's a wind going straight down into the town end goals. Like, Havern got 11 points. I mean, it was literally a tap, because the wind just carried it over. I mean, 2 points for a breach for 3v3. I think it feels a bit too harsh.
And some of those breaches were, in some of the games, maybe not the Roscommon game, there was obvious ones, but some of them were very technical, 1 foot over the line and that. So, look, either way, 2 point from frees has to go.
I mean, the 3 up, 3 down, I think the big thing was the different viewing angles from it. When you're at the game, you can see it, and you can see when you're at home on the television. I was watching the Galway Armagh game. Suddenly you'll see a linesman come onto the pitch, the referee will stop it, and you kind of know that he's on about that, but you can't see what's happened. I think it's the viewing for a television audience might be changed.
For television, definitely tricky. You saw and it actually took quite a while for the communication to happen between the linesmen. I know they're hooked up, but they still seemed in a lot of the games to have to run over, and maybe just to be 100% sure that's what the linesman was telling the referee. I suppose the clarity, that's reasonable, but still seemed to take some time, and on TV it was confusing what the pause was there something off the ball incident, what it was. But yeah, you can clearly see from the stand when there's 2 up or 3 up, so it's very obvious. But again, like we talked about before, it was very clear, even more so from the weekend, for people to see that it's an impossible task for a referee, again back to club level, because not one referee made those decisions themselves. They've completely relied on the linesman, because it's physically impossible to look in 2 directions. So one referee can't do it, which is why I come back to the club game. I just don't know how that rule is going to work.
Yeah, because there was an example of in the Roscommon game on Sunday. The linesman actually got it wrong. There was actually 3 Roscommon players in the half. He waves at the referee, looks back, and the Roscommon players are nearly like statues, nearly saying, well, look, we're all here. It was a mistake. So if there's a mistake, which can happen, absolutely it can happen, but that's with linesmen and umpires. I just don't know, unless it's blatantly obvious where a team looks like that 15, the referee can turn back, there's no one there. I don't know how this is going to be
applied.
applied.
It's very difficult. Even if a referee glances back and there is two, it's still hard to see through bodies to see if there's two, if there's three, or if there's four. And then something that was thrown out the weekend, I think that kind of went in under the radar. If you've got a black card, I think you only have to have two up then in that case. So it's very confusing. If there was one black card on a team, then the second black card came along. It's just difficult. Things like that. Look, one referee can't do that rule. It's as simple as that. While I think it was decent at intercounty level, I've no issue with the rule. I think it worked very well. It just can't work at club level.
I mean, the Roscommon game, we kind of saw a bit of everything. The mark as well, you highlighted here last week. Roscommon were robbed of one at the end, in my opinion. A clear mark. I think it was kicked in to end inside the 21. And I think the point is, before he might put the hand up, it's an easy enough score. But assuming he thinks I have the advantage here, I can kick it across. We might get a goal off it. If not, it's pulled back. And I think you've seen all the players at the end. It should have been a mark on these rules anyway. It should have been a mark.
It was a very obvious one, and he clearly played on looking for a goal chance or an easier point at minimum. And it's fully expected to be brought past for 3. I think now Davy Burke said the referee did admit he was wrong in that case. And with so many rules, I think that's expected. But again, it didn't happen for Roscommon, but it could have cost a game.
Did anything else stand out to you? I think in terms of the descent, we didn't see much of it, but there was an instance towards the end of the game where a down player clearly threw the ball away. It was brought up 50 yards. I personally think I don't mind that. That's deliberately slowing down the game. And do you know what? I think he should be punished for that. In terms of giving the handy the ball back, there was a lot of players nearly standing back or like this. They were trying not to get caught. There wasn't obvious examples, though.
No, I think all that was fine, and all of that with the solo and go as well really did speed up the game. There wasn't much stoppages in any of the games over the weekend, which was great. So I think all those little rules did help. And I just noticed then that the handing back to the ref won't be that big of an issue, because it's rare that you actually have the ball in your hands when a foul is committed. So more often than not, it's still over there on the ground, or the player in possession is fouled. So it doesn't really matter that much. But all those little rules did speed up the game, definitely, which was positive. Yeah,
and even the solo and goal, maybe not so much in the Roscommon game, the Galway game, it felt like some players were just... It was like this new rule, I'm going to have to use it, get used to it. It was nearly like there might have been a 20-yard kick forward, and they were actually, in a weird way, they were actually slowing their own attack down.
Yeah, that did happen in Galway. Particularly, I thought that Roscommon and Down had a far better handle on the rules and were better practicing them than Galway and Armagh. Yeah, exactly that. Like, it actually cost Galway a couple of times. I think they ran into bodies instead of just looking ahead and kicking. And Roscommon actually didn't use it that much, because they did look up and find a kick pass more often than not.
So looking at the game itself, Roscommon were playing against the wind in the first half, get off to a good start, and I suppose the first goal that Roscommon gets through Enda Smith, it was kind of a prime Enda Smith goal, really. He takes the ball from his own half, gives a couple of 1-2s and finishes. And look, you would have seen that. We've all seen it, Enda do that multiple times. Yeah,
a great goal and a great start to the game. I mean, that settles everyone. New rules, new year, players back. It just settled everyone into the game. Now, it didn't last long. Down got back into it, and Pat Havern was having a field day with the 2-pointers there, so very good footballer. So they got back into it with the breeze. That was always going to happen. In general, I think the Roscommon forward play was decent. There's one thing I noticed, that there were a lot of the when not forwards, but when Roscommon were attacking, the same players were filling up the same position. So it was very clear that they had practiced their attacking formation. And Brian Stack, for example, was filling that same position on the right hand side of the arc. Maybe it worked in challenge games and trains where he was getting shots off from there. Didn't happen for him in the game on Sunday. So I think Roscommon need to mix up their forward play a lot more. Than it was very rigid, very positional, and you could tell exactly where the players were going to be on the field. They need to mix it up. Armagh, actually, as bad as that game was against Galway, was a poor game. Armagh do mix up their forward play a lot better, and you'd see several players coming to one wing and isolating another, or players mixing up. They don't have to be on the same side in every attack. So I'd like to see a bit more mixing up like that. And saying that, as usual, our forwards in terms of shooting was very good, and especially the players that came on as well to finish the game off. Like, as always, it's our strength, but I would say again, defensively, that's our weakness, and I think it was shown again on Sunday. It was a bit chaotic back there. There wasn't any set defensive structure that I could see. Just, I don't know, relying on outscoring opposition it might not get you all the way.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of maybe the Cavan game last year in the group stage, whereas maybe just Roscommon went out with the attitude, we're going to outscore down. Now, you're not going to be able to do that. Like, when you come up against Monaghan at some stage in the league, I don't think you can play like that. But would that maybe have been in their mindset that, we're going to test these rules out? We know we have probably better forwards than down. We're going to outscore them.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, definitely. And if you're Shane Killeorn and the Smith, Darragh Craig, every attack now with the new rules feels like you're going to get a shot off, feels like you're going to score. Yeah. So I think even if down score, you're like, well, we're just going to go up and score anyways, and possibly a 2-pointer. So I think that may be the case. I would just worry that maybe whether it's the structure, it's not the 6 defenders and the goalkeeper at all. It's just the whole defensive structure when we're back there just didn't seem as steady as it was in other games last year.
Yeah, I suppose they'll point to that the fact that it really, when you look at the back 6 on paper, Colm Neary making his debut, Pierce Frost making his debut, Niall Higgins, he came in last year, still probably not fully experienced, he's still learning as it go on. Brian Stack, captain, very experienced. Shane Canan wearing 6, hasn't been tested back there, and Tim Lamb making his debut as well. So when you compare the front 6 to the back 6, I suppose the front 6 very experienced and players. The back 6, I suppose, probably still getting used to it.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, in fairness, and it goes back to our point we were talking about before. It's also good that we won that game with so many players back there, inexperienced, and getting valuable game time in what was a very competitive game. So it's great to see those players there, and I suppose surviving and doing fairly well. So yeah, that is a very good point, and it's good that they're there and getting blooded in the league.
Yeah, because it was interesting. Like, you still have Dylan Rowan, who could be a half-back option. Rory Fallon didn't come on at all. John McManus is there. I suppose you still have the Dailies and Davy Murray, who weren't in the panel at all. Declan Kenny is another one you'd imagine we'll be seeing, maybe wing back, wing forward. Like, they weren't even in the squad, and you look at the bench, like it looks very competitive this year. Yeah, in terms of even a 26.
It's definitely the strongest 26 we're going to see over the last 3 or 4 years. Definitely, like, I was surprised John McManus didn't feature. Yeah. I know that he's been going well. He's obviously very fit and very strong and athletic. There would be his main attributes, so I'm surprised, but I know he will feature. And as you say, with Rowan and Conor Daly to come back in and more, I think it will shore up the defence, definitely.
In terms of the lads who came back, Shane Killeorn started, Keane McKeown started, Kieran Mercer came off the bench at half time. What do you make of their performances? All got on the score sheet. Probably Kieran maybe looked the sharpest in terms of, like that he got a 2-pointer and look, that goalie, I think it just shows the class he has. Yeah,
I think it's going to take a bit of time for some of the others like Keane. The nature of the way he plays, he wants to take on a man all the time, and that didn't just quite work out at the weekend, but I think it'll take a few games to get up to speed in that regard, because that's nearly a tougher game to play, his style of play, to get used to again after being out. Kieran is just Kieran. He's a brilliant footballer, and you can see that straight away, and he's going to feature more and more. I can't see him being on the bench for any number of games, and he definitely won't be on the bench come championship. He'll be playing. Ben O'Carroll, of course, came back, which was brilliant to see, and Ben is probably, in terms of what we need in a forward, he needs to be there as a ball winner. The three up. He's brilliant at ball winning. He really wants the ball. Is making brilliant moves. He makes cutbacks. He does different movements up front. He's nearly one of the best ball winners in there, even though his stature wouldn't suggest that, but he is, and he really wants the ball, and he wants to give and go quickly. So if players can play with him, you'll get scores.
Yeah, I think Ben kind of reminds me maybe of Ian Burke, the job he did for Galway. I don't think he's going to be ever prolific, getting maybe 5 or 6 points from play, but in terms of ball winning, knowing that you can kick in a ball and you've a fella in there that's going to win it 9 times out of 10, and I think the way he even manoeuvres out of these, maybe 2 or 3 men around him sometimes is impressive. So if you have that player with a 3 up that you can kick straight away, he's going to win it, and he'll usually probably chip in with 2 or 3. I mean, he's a serious option.
He's brilliant, and his movement in general is the best in the Roscommon team, I would say, but also off the ball is brilliant. He makes space for other players as well. And now that you mentioned just the ball winning inside, in the games in general over the weekend, and including the Roscommon game, but again, probably most noticeable was Galway, was the players are clearly not used to kicking the ball into a full forward line. There was so many opportunities where around that arc where you could just dink a ball in where it was 3-on-3. In my opinion, it's absolutely criminal that when you have a 3-on-3 situation, which never arose over the last 5 years, that you don't kick it in. Players have to get their head up and look in. And players aren't even looking in. They're passing across that arc, looking for a 2-pointer, keeping possession because they might have an extra man with the goalkeeper, but they're not looking in, which is often a 2v2 or 3v3 inside. And like more often than not, I would just kick it in. Now, the opposite to that is what we're just talking about, Ben O'Carroll, is the players inside aren't used to that sort of movement. They're not used to over the last 2 or 3 years moving for a 30-yard kick pass in because it just didn't happen that often. So there needs to be both looking in every time you have the ball in the arc, and secondly, the players inside need to practice much better working with each other and their movement inside.
Yeah, although this game was very high scoring, there was still, I think the big talking point as well over the weekend and the games that were televised is the goalkeeper coming up. Every goalkeeper, I'm pretty sure, came up at some stage, and the 12v11, and maybe not so much in this game in terms of long periods of possession, but it did feel like a bit of backwards, sideways football in some games, and maybe some games we didn't actually think the rules were there at all.
That's going to happen more and more. When teams realise, I felt the keepers came up, and again we thought Conor Carroll would come up, and he did more than other keepers, but still didn't do a huge amount when he was up there. I think teams are still not using the extra man as much as they could. It's not incisive enough. Maybe if that was an outfield player, it would be. I know that Down brought on a sub. I think Armagh did as well as an outfield player. I think you might see more of that after the weekend. But Conor Carroll is fine. He's a good footballer. He should be able to do more when he gets up there. But I think we're not using it enough. And also, secondly, like your point there is going to be large spells of keep ball outside that arc. Because when you're up an extra man and you're up by 3 points and there's 10 minutes to go in a game even, 5 minutes to go. Yeah. Dublin, for example, could have kept the ball for the last 3-4 minutes. They didn't, but they could have if they wanted to. They will again, because Dublin are Dublin and they'll realise their mistakes. And I don't think there's any way, unless there's a mistake, a slip, a bad hand pass, team like Dublin, you're not going to get the ball off them 12v11. It's just you can't do it. You might get the ball off a lower Division 2 team.
I suppose the example is that they'll say is the down keeper got caught out.
Yeah.
Now, how often will that happen? And I suppose the finish from Kieran was so good that how many players are going to do that? Yeah. It was only one example, I suppose, of a keeper getting caught out badly.
Yeah, I just think there's going to be more of that used. I think it's beneficial to a team if you're 5 minutes left in the game, and also there's going to be more of slowing the ball up and waiting for your goalkeeper to come up rather than just mad trying to attack straight away. So there's going to be both of those things, I think, with the 12v11.
Would you get rid of it? I mean, there's some people getting rid of it. I think you don't want to take the development of a goalkeeper out of the game. I think it was evolving with keepers pushing up on kickouts and new dimensions to the game. Some people are saying, well, the goalkeeper is now nearly too influential. What would be your thoughts on that?
I think you can't stop. I think it'd be wrong to stop the goalkeeper going into the other half. I think it's probably fine. We'll see how it goes. I think it's probably going to be okay, but I would worry that it's actually going to become too easy to keep the ball when teams figure it out, and too easy maybe then therefore to score after that. So maybe that won't happen. Look at 11 defenders they're clearly already marking zonally. There's a lot of teams who just use that arc as their zonal defence, and they have players in each position and maybe one just behind, and then you have your man markers 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 closer to the goal. So the zonal defensive system is usually more than enough even down a player to stop a shot going off. So I think it's the possession scenario that'll be most striking when it comes to bigger games.
Yeah, just looking in at our forward line, so Jeremy Mercer got 7 points, Keane McKeown 1-1, Darragh Craig 4 points, Enda Smith 1-1, and Shane Killoran got 1 in the first half. Off the bench, Kieran got 1-2, and Donny Smith and Ben O'Carroll came off with the point each. So I suppose good spread of scores there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and as ever, all those players are going to score in games, and the three off the bench are probably going to even score more there again. Some of them will feature the next day. Some players there had slightly quieter games, I suppose, and you're just going to have to mix it up and see what happens the next day. I think during this league campaign, as we talked about before and again earlier, the defence can be changed up. those attacking players can be mixed up. Donny could start the next day, for example. Like, it could be totally different. It could be 2 or 3 players in the forline, 2 or 3 in the backs, and still I think Roscommon will probably beat Louth at the weekend, even if you mix it up a little bit, which is good to do. And you can't do that in Division 1, so there's lots of positives of being in Division 2, I think.
Yeah, because look, there's good competition for places. As I said, the likes of Rory Fallon and Conor Cox, for instance, they started the game against Armagh last year. The last game didn't even get a minute.
No, and they'd both be expecting it. I know Conor Cox would definitely be mad to come on. I think he'd be loving those that around the arc. Yeah. He'd be winding up, and then he'd be doing his little dummy solo, and then the outside the boot, which is great, and he can score them. So he'd be mad to come on there. Like, there's definitely 9 forwards, maybe even 10, that in their heads think they should be starting, and that, I think that can only be a positive thing. And around the middle is similar now, because if you can move Shane Killoran out of that forward line, you can move him to midfield. Eddie Nolan, Keith Doyle, Shane Canan, they're all around the middle there, and we need those bigger bodies, as we saw, and we knew it was going to happen at the weekend. 90% of kickouts are long. Like, Down tried 1 or 2 short. They did come off, to be fair, but they're dodgy, and they're just going to be long. I think nearly all of Roscommon kickouts were long, so that's the way they're going to be. It's going to be overloads on one side, and that's it. Try your best to win it.
And might that be in the thinking of team selection, that we've seen so many contested balls out in the middle, and you mentioned that, I suppose, the half forward line, Killoran, Harney, Enda Smith.
Yeah,
they're all players who have played around the middle, either at 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And you have Shane Canan there at 6 as well, so you're talking six midfield type players there already in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian Stack is very smart at winning breaking ball and breaking down to players. He's actually quite a good jump at them and can do that. So I think that's absolutely some of the thinking. You have to have bigger bodies around. Like, if you're playing someone like Galway in Championship, who just by their nature are a big team, you're going to have to match that at least to be in with a contest in the middle of the field. So that's definitely some of the thinking. Some of those players are always going to have to play.
Is there any negatives in this game? I mean, 321, I was looking, I think, with the joint top scores this weekend. I'm sure, look, 120 is disappointing to concede, but I suppose on the flip side, Down got 6 2-pointers. So I suppose in old scores, that's 114. So I think we probably have to rethink our thinking in terms of how much we're conceding nowadays as well.
Yeah, exactly. I still think the scoring was decent given the conditions of the game, the wind and the Hyde. It's still probably above what it would have been this time last year, so I think it's positive for Roscommon. But I do think we're going to see, as we said before, we're going to see Roscommon scoring more this year. I think just have better players at our disposal, more players back like Keane and Kieran and Ben. So that is going to happen. Again, the little worry was the defensive setup, but then again, they were inexperienced players. So given that, I think they did well. Like Colm did well on his debut there, so I'd have no issues with that. But there just seems to be less of a structure there, we'd say, than the very rigid attacking structure we seem to have.
Yeah, and I think in the couple of previews we did in the advance of this year and the league, I suppose the big thing was to try and get new players out. That is key to get the balance. And as you said, Colm Neary getting a start, Pierce Frost getting a start, Tim Lamb getting a start as well. You know, they're 3 lads that have got their first competitive games under their belts now. And
I think if it was Division 1, I just don't think that would have been possible. Maybe one of them could have started. Even if John McManus is only coming back from a couple of years out, I still think he's experienced. If it was Division 1, you'd have to put him in there just for experience. He's man-marked top players in the country, so he would have been there. So Division 2 is great. It's great. It's going to be better for us come Championship, I think. And like Armagh last year, Dublin the year before. Now, look at Dublin, but Division 2 teams can go all the way. So, you know, it does help.
Who was the standout player for yourself yesterday? Jeremy Mercer got the official man of the match with TG Cahir, but was there any major I think there was solid performances around the pitch. Maybe no spectacular.
I don't think there was anything outstanding. I think players were very good, very solid. I think it was unfortunate for Shane Killoran. I thought he was going well. He was obviously on a yellow card. I'd say that's one of the main reasons he was taken off. I think I've seen Davy Burke do that before. So they'll have to be careful if they want to play a whole game with him. You're going to be whipped off if you get a yellow card. So I think he was doing well around the middle. Eddie was good. Yeah, nothing outstanding, as you say, but a lot of solid performances there. I think Keane McKeown is going to be a regular solid performer, but just didn't show up maybe as well at the weekend. And Darragh the same, he can score, but probably not as happy with himself at the weekend either. But again, they'll both be playing and they're going to get better and better.
Looking ahead to Sunday away in Louth, it's actually been moved from RD to Drogheda now. So Louth got a 2-point win against Westmeath, maybe tighter than people would have expected, giving Westmeath's departures out of their squad. I mean, if Roscommon can go away to Louth, get a win, there's a break, then hopefully maybe Pearce's lads back as well. I mean, they may come back this weekend, we're not sure, but if you can get 2 wins out to going to that first break, it'd be a massive help. Yeah,
I was very surprised that Louth only won by that margin. I thought they were going to hammer Westmeath, to be quite honest. I do feel like Westmeath will be at the bottom of the division. I think if Roscommon win at the weekend against Louth, we can even bring on more players, like we've talked about, and give them more time. So, because I think we're going to be in the top 2 really if we haven't beaten Down, and then if we beat Louth at the weekend. I think we will go to Louth and probably win. We're playing well, and I can see that happening.
Would there be a reluctance from Davy Burke, do you think, to change the team, or will he be thinking, do you know what, I'll give Dylan Ruan a start. I might bring in John McManus for someone, to mix it up, to get, across the maybe 26 players have had, decent game time over 2 weekends. Or is he thinking, you know what, I picked a team, I'll stick with this for Sunday?
I think he should change it up. At least 3 players, I think, in each of these games. It's not, they're equal. A lot of the players on the bench here are very equal to the starting 15 there at the weekend. I don't think it matters. Even the forward line, you could switch 3 with another 3 and it's not going to make a whole pile of difference. They're all excellent. So I think they should bring on 3 different players. That's what Division 2 is for. I think it'll pay off when it comes to Championship if we do that massively.
I mean, look, after the weekend's games, Monaghan had a good win over Cavan. Louth got their win. Cork got a win against Meath, but I think Meath missed a lot of chances. There's nothing to suggest that Roscommon, I suppose, after this weekend won't be towards the top at least.
No, I still think they're going to be they're going to be in the top 2 still. That's what I thought at the beginning. I still think that's going to be the case. Probably even more so now. I think they're actually slightly stronger, Roscommon, than I give them credit for. The squad is stronger, and I'd like to see that bit of rotation from game to game will be excellent. And I think you have to think about summer even now in January, and that will be the way you think about summer, by rotating the team every week, I think.
And finally, overview of the football weekend in general. It's probably too early to fully, I suppose, judge certain things. You're already set on the 2 points for the gone. 3 anyways. It's gone.
It has to go. And don't wait for this 2 weekend break or whatever it is, with the bit of confusion with Shane Walsh's one, coupled with just too easy for free takers. They don't deserve 2 points for it. It has to go.
Would the flip side say, well, in terms of scoring difference and that could mess up if that is in place for one game, has it to be in place for the whole league?
I don't think so, because if there was one game that was postponed because of the weather or something, you'd consider that. But in my view, you could just scrap it. Everyone's got an equal go of it. They've got their fair share of 2 pointers. I think the arc is fine. I think it's more difficult for players, as you can see, to score from that arc unless there's a stronger breeze. But I think defensively teams weren't really, they were kind of already measuring that arc as their zone in defence, and they didn't push out enough when there was a wind. So teams will be smarter next weekend than that. So I think that those 2 pointers are fine. Because it is a skill, not many players still will score from outside the arc in open play, but the free taker, that's for fun, so it is.
Perfect, Conor. Thanks very much for joining me. And remember, you can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Just search the Rossie GA podcast.